We'll move into finance and administration. First item is to consider approval of contract with Joshua Wiener for art project number 3.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I'm here tonight to talk about the contract that's before you for consideration with Joshua Wiener for art project number 3. And so I thought I would start this evening and talk about a little bit of history, how we got here, and then we'll get into the specific contract details. So this project started in late 2012 after a citizen survey that occurred. And during that survey, as you may recall from one of my recent presentations, we asked a question that says, how satisfied are you with the overall image of Merriam? And in 2012, the level of satisfaction our residents had for the overall image of Merriam actually dropped a significant amount. It went from 66% to 61%. As a result of that, the council developed a strategy to improve the public's perception of Merriam. And this occurred in a variety of ways. There were efforts made about how to improve our website, how to improve our newsletter, the emphasis we needed to put on improving roads and bridges and infrastructure throughout town, being proactive about economic development, a whole plethora of items. But one of the things that came out of that was an initiative to actually enhance the public spaces throughout town. And those of you who were on council during that time may have remembered that this actually started at the council level. There was a city council member who said, hey, we should focus on this, and maybe we should get a resident committee put together to take a look at how the city might be able to do that. So the council formed a resident committee. And at that time, the directive given to this committee was be creative. We're not sure how we want public spaces to be enhanced, but we know they need to be enhanced somehow. Bring back a recommendation to the city council about how we might do that. And so as a result of that, this resident committee said, I think the way to enhance public spaces in Merriam is to start putting public art in those spaces, as is the case in a number of our neighboring cities and cities across the country. So this resident committee is still in existence today. It's the Public Art Committee. It's an ad hoc resident committee where the chair is appointed by the mayor. We have 9 members of this committee. You can see this first set, Phil Lammers, is the chair, and we've heard from him recently. Then we have a group of residents, Jerry, Jan, Pam, and Stacy, who are people interested in art in the community or artists themselves. And then we have a number of liaisons to other related groups within Merriam, the Downtown Merriam Partnership, because that's been a key area of focus for locating art in that area. So Stoney Bogan is on the committee. Kathy Stoll is a liaison to the park board. And then, of course, we have council members Frisbee and Hands as our city council liaisons. So as the council was forming this public art project, it started with an initial budget of $500,000. So this was approved as part of the fiscal year 2015 budget process. And it was implemented as a 5-year program to install art and branding elements throughout the community. And the way we got to the $500,000 budget was an average of $100,000 budgeted per year. I will note, just like we talked about during our recent sales tax initiative, that this project is funded by the general sales tax as part of our CIP. And we do have a pull factor in Merriam, which means that for every dollar we collect in sales tax, 82 cents comes from visitors to Merriam. So although our residents are benefiting from public art, we're not necessarily carrying the full weight of that expenditure because of how it's funded. So as with a lot of pilot programs, and we're experiencing that now with some other pilot programs in the community, after our first year, the City Council revisited this project. So in 2015, as part of the next year's budget process, we collectively as a city recognized that there were some things we didn't know going in, and so the budget was amended. So some things that we weren't contemplating when we first started this project is that for a public art project, if you're buying a piece for $100,000, there are other costs associated with that. And so here in Merriam, we use a public art consultant to help us with our art selection and site selection. These calls for artists are publicized nationally, and so we've been able to utilize the network of that consultant to help us get the word out. We also know there are things like site work that have to happen as part of this project, legal fees, all of those sorts of things. So the budget was changed, and it became, the overall project had a budget of $565,000, so an average budget of $113,000 per year. I will note that these are multi-year projects, and so at the end of the 5-year program, we have to hit or be under the project budget of $565,000, but it does not mean that each project has to be $100,000 or $113,000. We just have to hit that overall target budget at the end of the 5 years. So council actually recently had a conversation on this as part of your city council goals and objectives that were adopted in February. Underneath the goal of enhancing community connections, the council approved an objective to support a public art program throughout the city, and this contract before you this evening is intended to help fulfill that objective. So here's a progress update on where we stand so far. As you know, we've completed projects 1 and 2, still time in planting the seeds, and we've done that for a figure of $240,000. Right now before you is a contract for project number 3, the proposed project by Joshua Wiener with an overall project budget of $110,000. And that would leave $215,000 for projects 4 and 5. So looking at how we've done since we started this project to date, if you noticed, 61% in 2012, we made some considerable progress over the last couple of years in that area, and just recently in our 2008 citizen survey, 77% of Merriam residents were satisfied with the overall image of our community. So we are making some steps in the right direction, and hopefully we'll continue to see that number rise as we move forward. So now I want to talk about how we got to today on art project number 3. So this is a project that has actually been in the works for over a year. It was approved, and funding for this project was approved in 2006 as part of our fiscal year 17 budget process. And so we kicked this off in June 2007 with a national call for artists with the assistance of our consultant. We received 45 proposals, and a small group, the chair, myself, and our consultant, met to review these proposals to see which were qualified and which were unqualified. Did you meet the requirements of the call for artists? And so we were able to narrow that group down to 38 qualified proposals. And then the Public Art Committee met in October and selected 3 finalists. As you can imagine, going through 38 artist proposals and reaching a consensus of 9 members of a committee for art took some time. We spent the better part of a Saturday at that meeting reviewing proposals. And I will note that these are not site-specific proposals. The artist just presents, here's the type of art I do, here are other projects I've done in this price range, etc. So you really have to think about what type of art would work on this site, who has had success in this area, what are things that we think might fit with the projects we've done already, what's something that might be a little different than what we've done already. So a lot of factors go into selecting those 3 finalists. And then once the finalists are selected, we give them a stipend, a $1,200 stipend, which is typical in this sort of process to say, please develop a site-specific proposal. So these artists spent 3 or so months developing a site-specific proposal, coming out to Merriam, taking a look at the site, going back to their studio, coming up with a concept they think would fit our needs and our vision for the site in Merriam. And then those artists actually come out on site in our February Public Art Committee meeting, and each gave an hour-long presentation to the Public Art Committee, reviewing their proposal, talking about their qualifications, talking about their vision for the piece of art they were presenting. And from that meeting, the Art Committee narrows it down to a finalist to bring to the City Council, and that's what's being recommended to you tonight. So this has been a long process. A lot of time has been put in by our Art Committee, and I'd like to thank them for their efforts as volunteers to our community, because it really does take a lot of work to get through all of these. I will also note that the site that is being proposed for this is not actually a site that's owned by the City of Merriam. It is a site that Johnson County Parks and Recreation allows us to use, and that once the debt is paid off on that site, it will likely come over into city ownership. So I actually had to go to the Johnson County Parks and Recreation Department earlier this year and request permission to approve or to put a piece of art on the site, which was approved. So this is the proposal by Joshua Wiener. The details are in your packet. The highlights of this project are the contract budget is for $95,000. Again, less than the overall project budget of $110,000, because that does include some other expenses like our consultant fee, legal work, a little bit of site work, etc. And the timeline, if it's approved tonight, we'd be looking at a spring 2019 installation. Just to cover the details for those in the audience who may not have seen this yet. So this piece of art is looking at, it's a caterpillar who is gazing at a butterfly who is sitting atop a cairn, which is a wayfinding symbol that has been used throughout history. And the cairn is providing a nod to Merriam's history in settling this area, and the caterpillar and butterfly represent the transformation that's happened over time from Merriam and the development in this area of Johnson County. The caterpillar is 9 feet tall and carved out of stone, and then the cairn will be river boulders stacked with an aluminum butterfly on top. It's about 12 feet tall. And then as part of the conversation about what's next for the Arts Committee, they did identify 2 locations to be considered for project number 4 and project number 5. For project number 4, they'd like to propose to City Council that we rethink the entrance of City Hall. We're doing a police department remodel just finished, and we'll have a new community center and hopefully a library across the street in the next couple of years. And they thought there would be an opportunity to kind of jazz up the front of City Hall in this atrium area. And so they'd like to devote some time and effort to looking at that. And then project number 5 would be to take their remaining budget and utilize it for an additional art piece as part of the community center project. So I covered a lot of ground there. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has on the process or Josh Wiener's specific proposal.